They've been to Washington, they represent themselves. For the first time in my life, I've come across a man who I honestly believe, and I would put my life in his hands, that he will go to Washington and he will represent us, the people. But thank you, Brian, for that. I just have one question. What has happened to Zach and Cody?
Zach and Cody. So Zach, his father was a police officer. I think they're in Portland, Oregon. They're somewhere out in Oregon. He now works for the same police department as his father. He's been on the sniper team. That's Zach DeLong. We still keep in contact. Cody Bonk. And this speaks to the amazing things that these guys go on and do in life. Cody Bonk, who was once, specialist, shaved head, looked like a little kid. Right now, he's probably in his last year of medical school. We filmed this last summer. I think he was right towards the end of it. He's finishing up his last year of medical school. You think of the experience that he had on the battlefield, him talking about, this time of just being this young green medic on the battlefield. He's seen things that most doctors have probably never seen in his life, and he saw it on a regular basis. And De La Fuente, he actually went back. He's in Southern California now, and he has his own truck driving company. He owns a fleet of FedEx trucks that he goes out there and he does franchise work for FedEx. And the way that these guys go out there and leave the battlefield and just accomplish something amazing life, it amazes me every single day. It makes me proud to call these guys my brothers and my friends, because they teach us how to do it. They taught me how to do it. I can tell you that what we see around us absolutely inspires us, right? If we see something bad around us, that might inspire us in a bad way. If we see something good around us, that's going to inspire us in a good way. And the leaders that I had in the military, they taught me how to do it. Because the leaders I had in the military never once asked me to do something that they wouldn't do themselves or that they hadn't already done themselves. And that's the standard by which people need to operate in Washington, D.C., but that's not the standard by which they do things. They have a track record of being up there and asking of us, the people, things that they would never in their life wish on their family or themselves, and that can't be the way that it's done. If you want to lead, then be a leader. Be a leader and lead by example. And that's what I believe, and that's how I'll do it. Yes, ma'am. You forgot you had a question.
Yeah, I did. Well, you talk about your military career. I think it's kind of interesting that in colleges you chose to go to Harvard, which is one of the most liberal colleges. And for them, it must be kind of like, I thought about this, a donkey giving birth to an elephant. Okay? And so they're kind of surprised. So tell us, what did you learn about that you're going to be able to use in Washington, mixing with all the liberals at Harvard?
So I actually just completed my degree at Harvard University. I was up in Boston last week for commencement. So it's good to officially be done with that, and it's good to now be able to choose the literature that I want to read instead of having somebody foist upon me what it is they're going to make me read. And I always give this to Harvard. It is, for the most part, just like most of the Ivy League, it's very far left-leaning. But in that, I can tell you, I never felt as though I was slighted or I was penalized for my political point of view. It was, there was a lot of arguments there, no question, but I don't feel as though I was penalized for it. So in that, I give them credit for that. My coursework was this. I studied very specifically, my concentration was economics. Beyond that, I had a minor in government, and I had another minor in environmental studies. And I think two of those are very important for what's going on in the world today. I think economics is something that's just so needed in Washington, D.C. when we have a federal government that's been layering year upon year of deficit on us for decade after decade after decade. I tell people, my expertise might be counterterrorism, and I can tell you, we've been hit hard. We've been hit hard by terrorists, and it stung us, but it didn't bring us to our knees. What will bring this country to its knees, in my opinion, is to turn out like Greece, or to turn out like Puerto Rico. And it's in that we need people that are going to go out there and be responsible and recognize that every dollar doesn't belong to the federal government and they're just good enough to let us keep a few of them for ourselves. Every dollar belongs to us. It's the work of our hands. It's the fruits of our labor. And we're good enough to send some to Washington, D.C., and they better use those dollars in an accountable and responsible way. They better not spend more than what we send up there, because every dollar that they spend that we didn't give them, that's a tax on us. That's a tax that they're levying upon us, because Washington doesn't create dollars. They don't create jobs. They rely on us to give the dollars to them. So if they're spending something that we didn't give them, that is a tax on our future and on our kids' future. And I don't appreciate that. And the other expertise that I have, academically speaking, that's so important is this, and it's important for our community here locally, and that's environmental studies, because I studied very specifically, I made a choice to pursue studies in watershed infrastructure and green infrastructure. Because what's going on out there in our Indian River Lagoon, in our waterways, being destroyed by the waters coming out of Lake Okeechobee into our area, the storm runoff that's going unfiltered into our waterways, it's destroying the most beautiful and pristine part of our community. You ask somebody why they moved down here, or why they live here, why they choose to live in this community. It's because of the water, and it's because of the weather. And when I was pursuing my studies, I wanted to be an educated voice in the fight for keeping our waters pristine and keeping our waters blue, and making sure that I don't have to worry for one moment about my son Magnum or my son Maverick or my little girl Madeline going into those waterways. I don't want to have to worry about that. I don't want to have to worry about them going out fishing, or them going out on a boat, or them just going for a swim out there. I want them to go out there and have a smile on their face, and every other kid and every other family to be able to do the same. It's something that I care about deeply, and that's why I pursued those studies. And it's something that I think I can be a real voice for in Washington, D.C. I believe that whoever represents this area has to do everything that they can do to get placed on the Committee of Transportation and Infrastructure in Washington, D.C. Because it is the Committee of Transportation and Infrastructure who handles the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. It's the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers who is handling the Central Everglades Restoration Project, everything having to do with the discharge of waters out of Lake Okeechobee into our waterways here. And it's also the Committee of Transportation and Infrastructure that has the greatest possibility for affecting other things that are important to us, not just as those in the Treasure Coast, but just as Floridians as well. If anybody's going to have any effect on what's going on with the train, it's going to be those on the Committee of Transportation and Infrastructure. We as Floridians, we send so many more dollars to Washington, D.C. through the taxes that are levied on us as a result of the 18.3 cents per gallon gas tax and the 24.3 cents per gallon diesel tax, then what we get back, we're being robbed by Washington, D.C. I couldn't begin to tell you how many more dollars of revenue Florida would have if we were simply allowed to keep the tax dollars that we send there as a result of that transportation tax. That is a committee that we need Florida representation on, because it can help us in so many different places. So that's a little bit on it.
So you will fight the train then?
I will fight the train. Look, I live in St. Lucie County. I'm the only candidate that lives in St. Lucie County. I live in St. Lucie County up on Hutchinson Island, almost at the very northern tip of the district. And I can tell you, even being all the way across the waterway, we hear the train every single time that it runs up and down our corridor. We hear it at midnight, we hear it at 10 p.m., we hear it at all the other times that it comes through here. And I've been telling people this as well. And this is not to sound alarmist, but the trains that run through our area and any area, they are absolutely a terrorist threat. And I'm not telling you this because it's some far-off idea. I'm telling you this because this is something that I very specifically had to look at as a bomb technician. One of my friends here that's volunteering here with us, Michael Clark, back a long time ago when we were combat engineers, right after 9/11 happened, we found ourselves on Army bases building large berms around the huge propane tanks that sat at the gates of Army bases so that some terrorists couldn't sit a mile off base and put a .50 caliber round into those tanks and create a massive detonation. The train cars that run up and down our coast looking to carry liquefied natural gas from the port of Palm Beach up and down, they carry about 33,000 gallons of liquefied natural gas in one train car. And the liquefied natural gas, it weighs about 3.5 pounds a gallon. That's about 105,000 pounds of liquefied natural gas in one train car. If one of those were to be identified in a terrorist plot and detonated, it would, and this is my expertise, I was a bomb technician, it was my job to measure blast effects and do post-blast analysis. It would literally level an area of 2 to 3 miles. I'm not giving you something that's out of Never Never Land. This is very realistic. I can tell you, as somebody that's combated terrorism, terrorism is up to the imagination of the terrorist, the imagination of the bomber. And if I can think of it, somebody else has already thought of it. Nobody thought that at 9/11 they were going to use aircraft to crash into buildings. That wasn't a scenario that was played out. The enemy that we face is very cunning and very resourceful, and they know how to hit us in ways that we've never imagined because they're spending all day long just trying to think of ways to hit us that we've never imagined. And that's what we face, and that is my expertise. In that, I will say I hope the food doesn't get cold, and I hope the sweet tea doesn't get hot. Help yourself, grab any materials that you want, ask us if there's something you want, come up to me if there's a question you have. Thank you again, I really appreciate it.